Hello, my little mathematicians. Today, we're going to explore writing equations from bar models. So let's go ahead and take a look at example 1 right here. It says there are 12 giraffes and 9 springboks in an exhibit at the animal park. How many animals are there in the exhibit altogether? Okay, so you're trying to find what? What was my keyword there? They said you're trying to find how much altogether, which means like the totals. You probably want to add them together, right? So do we know how much the total is? No, but we know that there's 12 giraffes and 9 springboks. And so that's why they said this plus this adds to this total right here. Now, I can see that from the word problem up here, but even if I didn't have that hint of the word problem, just by looking at this, you can see, oh, hey, I'm going to take this guy, the 12 giraffes, plus this guy, the 9, and together it should equal that total that we don't know. And they told me to use the variable of A. Now, if I could possibly simplify it, I can. Do you see any like terms? Yeah, 12 plus 9 is 21. Okay. If it says to define your variable, right there, it's the unknown of the total. But at the same time, they already defined it right here. So there were 21 total animals. If they ever ask for the equation first, here it would be, and then this is the answer, 21 animals. Okay, next one. They actually want me to draw the bar graph myself. So let's try and figure out what type of problem this is. It says draw a bar model and then write an equation and then solve it. There are 14 boys and 18 girls in your class. How many students are there in your class altogether? What type of problem is that? Yeah, it's another totaling problem. So I have some total. Do we know the total? Nope. But we do know that there's some amount of boys and some amount of girls. How many boys? 14 boys. And how many girls? 18 girls. So together, the amount of boys plus the amount of girls are going to equal the total. So right here, I have 14 for the boys plus 18 for the girls, and that's going to equal the total. They didn't tell me a variable to use, so we can just use an S for the total number of students if we want. Although technically, I would say don't use an S in the future unless they tell you to, because halfway through your problem, that might look like a 5, just saying. Okay, so this is my equation. So I would type that if they ask for the equation. And then for the actual answer, what can I do? Can I simplify it? Yeah, 14 plus 18, those are both constants. So if I add those, I get 32. Bring down your equals S, which means there are a total of 32 students in the class. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and try the next one. It says, the principal scooped 25 scoops of ice cream. Students could pick from vanilla or chocolate. She scooped 15 scoops of vanilla ice cream. How many scoops of chocolate ice cream did she scoop? Okay, so we know that the total is always like over here, right? Equals the total. And oh, did they tell me the total this time? They did. The total is actually 25. So that means that you have this plus something else to equal that, right? So I have 15 for vanilla, and chocolate we don't actually know. That's unknown, and they told me to use a C for chocolate. Now, what do you think I do to solve for C? Yeah, I'm going to do the inverse operation. So right now these are being added. What's the inverse of adding? Subtracting. So let's go ahead and subtract 15 from both sides. So those cancel, and now you have C equals 5 minus 5 is 0, and 2 minus 1 is 1, which means 10 people got scoops of chocolate. Okay. And does that make sense? Maybe plug it back in to check. 15 plus 10, yeah, that equals 25. So that makes sense that this plus this would equal that. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Remember, you can always pause the video and try it yourself and then unpause it and come back. Of course, I said that in front of one of the really hard ones. It says 24 students signed up for summer camp sports. 1/4 of the students picked soccer. How many students signed up for soccer? Okay, so it's easiest if I always do the total first. Okay, so the total students, is it unknown or do we know it? let's see up here. 24 students signed up for summer camp sports. Okay, so a total of 24 people signed up. And of that 24, 1/4 of the students picked soccer. So that means basically we can break it in groups of 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what that means is like one of these 4 picked soccer, and then the other ones picked something else. Like maybe they picked, I don't know, basketball. Maybe they picked football, and maybe they picked baseball. Okay, so this group, one of the 4, is the only ones that pick soccer. So what is this box in comparison to like the total? Well, it's 1/4 of it. Do you remember how we said like 1/4 of a number? What do we do with those? We multiply them, right? Because this is a 4th, and this is a 4th, and this is a 4th, and this is a 4th. So if this is what we're trying to find, how many pick soccer, 1/4 of the total, which is 24, picked soccer. So now you just multiply those. So when you multiply fractions, make a whole number a fraction by putting it over 1. And you have 1 times 24 is 24. Over 4 times 1 is 4. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. So that means 6 people picked soccer if 1/4 of the total picked soccer. Another way we could have done it, sure, you could have said, okay, 24 divided into force equals how many? You could have kind of jumped to that part. All right, let's go ahead and try the back side and see how we do. If you haven't tried any yourself, pause it and then try them. Okay, so if you unpause it and you're back with us, this one, they kind of got us started, but we need to fill it out now. It says Ethan has 15 cars. So Ethan has 15. Max has 11. So here's Max. He has 11 cars. And then the difference, we don't know. So it says, how many more cars does Ethan have than Max? So when you're, how many more, that tells me it's a difference problem, right? So the total, Ethan, is equal to this, what do you think? Plus this, right? So this plus this will then tell me like, okay, what's the difference here between this and this one? Okay, well, what's that missing number? Well, how did I get d by itself? The inverse of adding is to subtract. And 15 minus 11 is 4. Those cancel. So yeah, the difference would be 4. And does that make sense? When you add these together, does that equal the total of 15? Yes. 11 plus 4 does indeed equal that 15. Okay, let's go ahead and see the next one. Mrs. Petro has 18 boys in her class. So Mrs. Petro is here, 18. Mrs. Zuderme has 5 more boys in her class than Mrs. Petra. Okay, so however many she has 5 more than that. Okay, but we're actually trying to find how many Mrs. Zuderman has. So it makes sense. It's not just 18. It's not just 5. It's this plus 5 more in order to equal this, right? So Zuderman is equal to Mrs. Petra plus 5 more. There we go. What's 18 plus 5? Yeah, 23. So then that means that Mrs. Zuderme has 23 boys in her class, which makes sense because 23 is 5 more than 18, which is how much Mrs. Petro has. And they said Zuderme has 5 more than Mrs. Petro. Okay, always logic through that your answer you get makes sense instead of like just accepting it and moving on. This one looks different. It says Roberta has 5 necklaces. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 necklaces. All right. There are 3 gems on each necklace. So here's necklace, 3 gems, necklace, 3 gems. All right, I get it. How many gems are there on all of the necklaces? So the total number is if we add all these, right? So I could go 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 plus itself 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5 to equal the total. Okay, yeah, sure, that's one way. What would be a better way? Yeah, you got it. There's 5 that each have 3. Okay. And 5 times 3 is 15, which you still would have gotten if you did 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Okay. So if you add all those together, that's going to tell you the total number of gems on the necklace. So even if you didn't have that up there, do you think you could have gotten the equation from this? Awesome. Okay, let's take a look at the next bar graph. It says there are 6 cars with the same number of students in each car for the class field trip. There are 24 students going on the field trip. How many students are in each car? Okay, so the total, we know the total is 24. Okay. And then we have 6 different cars, and we don't know how many are in each car. That's why it's unknown. Okay, so we have 6 S's, so 6 S's is equal to the total of 24. Any ideas on how to do that? Yeah, well, these are being multiplied, so the inverse of multiplying is to divide by 6. So now the reason I do that is that these cancel. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So now you have 1 times S, or just S, equals, and whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. 24 divided by 6 is 4, which means there are going to be 4 students in each car. Next one says fill out the picture to help you write an equation. A square field has a perimeter of 80 yards. Okay, so here's a square, and that means all the outside edges, this plus this plus this plus this, is all going to add to 80. If each side of the field is n, so this is n, and since it's a square, we know they're all identical. So that's n, that's n, that's n. And again, if you add all these together, n plus n plus n plus n, together all add to the perimeter, which they told me is 80. Or a smarter way to do that, you have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 n's. Okay, so then how do you do that? 4 times what is 80? Well, to figure that out, you would divide by 4, because anything divided by itself is 1. Now you have 1 times n is n, and whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. 80 divided by 4 is 20. So then that means that each side is 20 yards. Now, does that make sense? Okay, if 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20, does that equal 80? Well, yes, it does. Again, please always double check that your equations and math problems make sense instead of just moving on and accepting your answers. All right, my little mathematicians, I hope you did amazing. Great job. See you next time.